Hi, this is Dean. Welcome to episode 2 of SalesCafeTV.com. I'm here with Jim Trasport, who is the president of All County Sheet Metal. And I knew I wanted to interview Jim for Sales Cafe TV when I was doing some consulting work with him a couple years ago. And we sat down and we created a matrix of every possible customer that he could sell to, which in his industry is the AC industry, and then every possible thing across the top of the piece of paper that we could sell to each of those customers. And we went through and we put an X in every box that he was currently selling to them, and it was about 95% full. So I figure over 25 years, Jim has done something right with his sales and marketing efforts for All County Sheet Metal. So we're just kind of going to talk about how it is that came to be. From 25 years, your first thing you sold was a liner for a bird cage.
Yeah. In fact, we have the original invoice, and that's kind of interesting that we really haven't gone up that much on the price when you stop and think about it. So maybe that's part of the reason why we're doing what we're doing right is we try to maintain our cost so that it's comfortable for our customers.
Well, what are some of the things that you do in your day-to-day? Because you're not just a salesperson for All County. I mean, you're the GM. You manage it and you run the show and deal with customers and do pricing and all of that.
Yeah.
But as far as some of your business growth efforts, what do you do on a conscious level to try to grow your business?
Okay. When we started having this downturn, I heard about an acronym called VIA, and it really kind of summed up what our business philosophy has been as a family. Because originally we started in food, which was produce, and then my dad ended up going into the restaurant business. And I think if you can make it in a perishable type business like that, you can make it in just about anything, because you're dealing with people's inert ability to satisfy a need, which is hunger. Mm-hmm. So when I heard this VIA, I started thinking about it, and the acronym stood for V as value to your customer. We're going to have to give value. We're going to have to start looking in terms of how can we improve what we already do, mm-hmm. to make it more of a value. And probably the most important part of that acronym is A is the attitude. So on a daily basis, it almost has to become intuitive that we start thinking in terms of value and improvement. And those are the things that we've tried to impress upon our staff. And even for myself, I have to constantly undergird that and think about it on a daily basis. What can we do to improve the value? What can we do to streamline our production? Mm-hmm. Those are the kind of things, because when we were in the food service business, you had to turn the tables over.
Sure. People
came in, they weren't really patient. They wanted to get what they wanted and get along with their business.
Right.
And that wasn't the same in a business where you're looking at terms in hardware, I would call it, mm-hmm. in metals and things like that.
Okay. Now, when you say increase the value to the customer, you're not just talking about giving the customer a better price.
Right. That price is one thing, but when I look at value, it has to do with what kind of service can I give my customer. So many times people, they'll ask you for a price, and then it's a matter of trying to qualify what they want for that particular price.
Sure.
And so I try to give people options, as I've learned, and there again, going back to the restaurant business, they might not afford a steak, but they could afford a hamburger. So we don't want to let them get away, as my dad would say. Sell them something.
I like it. Sell them something. Now, in terms of improvement, do you have some kind of formal improvement program for your products or anything like that?
I like to try to keep in touch with my customer and develop a relationship where they will give me honest input. So many times people will just, to go along with you, they'll say, oh, well, I like it, or, well, I think the best gauge for that is if they keep coming back. My dad always used to say he would have customers coming across, and he was a hawker. He was always selling produce or whatever, and he could feel in people their genuineness, because they might come up and ask him what the price was, feel the tomatoes or whatever it was, and they'd say, well, I'll be back. And he was so funny because he would say, that's a be backer, that's a be backer. He could almost tell. And so you start working with your customers and you start getting a feel for them as to what is it that they really want in terms of value. I have some customers that value to them is placing the order and making sure that, number one, it's correct, and number two, that it's timely.
Right.
To them, that's big value.
Sure. Okay. And how about attitude? I've worked with you in your shop, and I know that you, as an individual, have a good attitude. But how do you try to instill that in your employees and your staff?
Well, it's been a little easier over the past few years because things have gotten a little tight in the economy. So I think people appreciate their jobs more. But I believe it really comes down to if you're going to be the CEO or the VP or whatever your position of leadership is, that in turn is influence. And so you want to, on a daily basis, exemplify that in your actions and in your words and your ethics. And some people get it and some people don't. Thank God the people that we've had some people that have been with me for 15 and 16 years. And so it's an example, I would say.
Okay. Have you done any formal sales efforts, like outbound calls or outbound appointments?
Right. In fact, when you were working with me, you said, why don't you go out and actually meet your customers and do it more on an outreach type basis instead of asking them to come to you or just calling them on the phone. And I found too, in a lot of ways, it's maybe you don't sell anything. In fact, a lot of times you don't. You're just solidifying the relationship you have with them.
Sure.
If there's something else that maybe you can do, you're supplying them with a service, a need, and if they know that it can be turned around quickly and satisfy their customer in turn, then you develop even more of and solidified a relationship with that customer.
Right. I'm a big advocate of there's something to be said when you show up and you sit down across from somebody, and especially for me because I live in Nashville and I cover most of the United States. So like if I go out to Los Angeles to see a customer who's never met me before, that says a lot about the company that I represent because I've paid for a plane ticket and it's time away from the family.
Sure.
And they're of value, they're important to me because I'm sitting down face to face and we're having lunch and we're talking about the company. And even if no contract gets signed that day, that's okay.
Sure.
They know that there's value in having a face-to-face relationship. What about marketing? We talked about sales a little bit. How about any formal marketing efforts?
Our business is a niche type market. We're dealing mainly with the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning industry. We do have some companies that are Fortune 500 companies, and marketing to them is it's challenging because you have to go through so many steps and buyers. Whereas we also, as a fab shop, we do custom work, and that's our niche market. And once you get a reputation for doing custom work, we have probably third generation where the grandfather was my customer, and then his son took the business over. Now the grandson is doing the business.
Really?
The business has been established for 30 years, and 27 of those 30 I've been at the helm. So you start developing a reputation that way. And then a lot of times people are technicians who eventually become the business owner. So you have that to fall back on. They think, well, the first thing they're going to need in sheet metal. Well, I did work with All County and Jim, so it's kind of a direct market from the standpoint that we've developed relationships with our techs and the owners.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for building a relationship with the people that and I mean, especially 3 generations deep, especially that.
Well, and another way we market is we have associations. We have the Air Conditioning Contractors Association. Once a year we have one big bash in March, which is coming up, and it's probably the most attended in South Florida as far as HVAC is concerned. So one of the things that I do, it's kind of PR. I'll do the announcements, and I get to know the members that are really genuine about their trade and their industry. So
Okay.
that kind of marketing also.
Okay, so you're helping out at an association, but not necessarily for the specific purpose of getting business.
Exactly.
Like you're not there hawking all county sheet metal.
Right.
You're there just as part of the industry and as someone who cares about the industry.
Right. I think too with people, if in sales, if we start taking care of the needs of others, a lot of times I just do kind of a consulting. There's no charge. I don't put a shingle out there, but people will call me because they know I'm in a metal business, and even though I can't do it, I'll do a referral, or I might, even refer them sometimes to a competitor.
Sure. And I'm going to ask you the big question here. Somebody comes in and they ask for a quote on something, and they come back and say, that costs too much. What do you do?
Well, I want to know what we're pricing out, because I want to compare apples to apples.
Sure.
And so many times that will happen to me, and I'll say, well, if you're going to get another price, let's be sure that we're all on the same page. Is it going to be according to standards? Are they going to supply you with the accessories? If they're 200 miles up the road and you don't have a particular part, are you going to be able to get that turned around? Is it going to stop the job? Are you not going to be able to get your CO? I bring up those field questions to them that makes them think, well, what is the value?
Right. So there is some value in knowing what kind of questions to ask from a field perspective, because you're not out in the field installing AC equipment, but you know the industry, so that you can say, well, if you don't get this installed in time, what's it going to do to your bottom line?
Exactly.
Cool. Now, what about that kind of wraps it up, but how, if somebody watching this, and I joked last time 1 of 3 people, and I know for sure 3 people watched it, if anybody watching wants to get in touch with you, should they go to your website, or how do you want them to get in touch with you?
Well, there are so many different forms of communication out there now. I like to talk to people one-on-one, so I like a telephone call. I don't mind emails. I'll respond to those, but I don't even answer mine. I have somebody doing that for me, as you well know. And I like to text, so it's usually telephone is the quickest way to get in touch with me.
Okay. You mind if I put your little phone number and scrolling numbers at the end?
That's fine. I'll even give you my cell phone, because I like to get phone calls from people that I don't really recognize their numbers. In fact, nowadays with all the telemarketers, it's interesting. So, but no, I like speaking to people one-to-one on the telephone.
Okay, very good.
Okay?
Do you have anything else?
I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thank you.